All right, today we got a great show planned for you because we have an in-studio guest, and every time I have an in-studio guest, it's just a little bit more fun. Cody, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Man, I'm glad you're here, dude. You're a local guy. Obviously, that's why you're here. And you recently just started listening to the show. The first episode you heard was, what did I call that episode? Was it?
A Dogman or Portals of Oak Ridge, something like that, I believe.
That's right. And you told me that you actually came through those portals into the other, and you're like, here I am, and I want to talk to you.
Yeah, it's weird. I came over and I was doing some research for my people, and I heard your investigation, so I had to come in and kind of quieten you down. Yeah,
you popping in, get me reined back in.
Yep.
No, but it's funny because you heard that show and it spawned you listening and reaching out and stuff. And what I find interesting is that you're me, only better. So, we're talking to a guy who professionally does audio for a living, and I'm just like a guy who learned as I went. So,
well, I don't know if anybody would call me professional, especially not my wife. But I try to be. I would say I've been screwing up a lot for the last 10 years, so I learned how to do things right. Well, more than 10 years, probably 20, 25 years I've been in audio. There's been a lot of mistakes that I've learned from, and had some opportunities. Some really awesome people give me some opportunities to mess up or do good, and you try to excel from those things. But yeah, man, I've dove head first into the audio world when I was younger, and haven't really looked back.
So you've done audio, you do video, you do a lot of stuff, and you worked for different what they were like. They were TV shows, right?
I worked for the production companies that did the TV shows. Pretty much, we build the shows from start to finish, and then we sell those to the networks. And there are a lot of true crime related, some reality, a little bit of everything. Stuff that definitely kept us busy. I actually helped grow a local company. I was there for a little over a decade. We grew, our production team was very small to start, and we ended up helping grow that place into the nation's largest producer of true crime TV shows. The most hours, I think, put into that kind of murder, death, kill type shows.
How was that for you?
At first it was really fun getting that creativity. We started getting busy, and the creativity kind of took us a backseat, and then the crunch came in. And I'll tell you what, looking at dead bodies for that long, it kind of gets a little unhealthy on your mind.
Yeah. I can imagine. I even doing the paranormal, the conversations and stuff, sometimes it gets in your head. And like I'm more of a conspiratorial type minded person to begin with. Like I kind of look at the world and like I don't trust a whole lot, and so doing this stuff, it kind of gets in my head. And there's times that I'll think I'm experiencing something, and I'm like, hold on a second, am I experiencing something, or is this just because I'm at the studio at 3 o'clock in the morning and I just talked to this person who told me how they were raped by a demon or something, like
running on no caffeine and no sleep.
Yeah. But it kind of gets to you. So I know you mentioned to me in the email, and you've mentioned to me before we were recording that kind of stuff got to you, and you had to kind of move away from that kind of content because it was messing with your head a little bit.
Yeah, man, it got really heavy. I actually met my wife there, and when she first started, it was the same thing. She was all gung ho, and she excelled really far. She climbed a lot further than I did. She's a better person all around than I am. But even with her,
so now it makes sense. Because you said that your wife says that you wouldn't be a professional. So you're saying your wife is in the same field as you.
Yeah.
I got you. And you're saying she's better than me. So that's I got it now. Yeah. I got it.
Well, I mean, also she's just, she helps raise she pretty much raises our 2-year-old.
Yeah.
On her back. He doesn't let me do a whole lot. He's definitely a mama's boy. So it's always amazing seeing a woman raise a son, have a child and then raise it. But yeah, it got really heavy on us, man. It was, COVID hit. We were working from home, and we had this infant. We were at home all the time, so we didn't really think daycare was going to be a good thing. We'd use that opportunity to stay with him. But he's sitting on our lap and we're working, and there's somebody's got 12 gunshot wounds in them. It's not really healthy, and we both kind of looked at each other and we're like, all right, let's try and do something else. So yeah, I kind of went back to I guess my roots, investigating and trying to do as much work in the paranormal realm as I could. It kind of lucked out. I left that company and started freelancing and doing my own stuff. And there was an opportunity from some people that I knew that had left the same company and started another production company doing not murder. So they finally reached out to me when work was picking up, and the first thing that they had come up was a paranormal, America's, haunted visitation. Like, where would you want to go for a ghost hunting holiday kind of experiment? And it was fun to get back into something that I was interested in and something that I could actually, be.
So you visited a lot of places.
Yeah. It was a long trip. The first one that we did, it was a month. It was a month and a half long, and it was a lot of being on the road. There was little flying and mostly driving. We went all the way up the East Coast, Lizzie Borden Hotel, Sleepy Hollow, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which I don't, it's pretty faux pas to say now, but
yeah,
it's that's they stuck with the name. That was a pretty wild place. And all the way down to Florida, St. Augustine. There were a couple in there that were, you can tell, like, probably in the network's ideas, because you get there and you're like, well, this isn't that scary, but we'll enjoy it. So we went to, what is the name of the lake in Georgia? Lady in the Blue Dress.
Oh, that sounds real familiar, Christian. Lady in the Blue Dress in Georgia. Christian, can you turn up his microphone sensitivity a little bit? I think I have the noise gate a little too strong, but if you turn the sensitivity up, it'll be fine.
It is.
It goes. But so what you said about the corporate side of, like, it was their idea kind of thing on certain spots. That's how I feel about a place in Pennsylvania called East State Penitentiary. Everybody loves it, and I've been there, and I'm just like, this seems very commercially and just very hokey.
Yeah,
and because, like, the first time I went there, I was like, oh yeah, we're about to get in it, and I'm walking around like, womp womp,
I will say there was a big, and going into some of this stuff, you feel like some of them might be tourist traps. It might be something that's just leading people in.
Yeah.
Because it had a story at one point. And I kind of kept my reservations about a lot of it, but there were some things that happened to us, which was enough to keep me on my toes and give me goosebumps every once in a while.
Yeah.
So that was, it was, I guess, a change of mind, I guess. Not what I expected. We went into Trans-Allegheny, went through the whole place during the day. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, when we went. And, they show us this is where they did the lobotomies, which if you don't know the history behind Trans-Allegheny and the history of lobotomies, that was pretty much not necessarily the birthplace, but where the majority of them happened. And there's a lot of really dark, messed up history happened there. Pretty much anybody, if they, their wife, they disagreed with their wife at all, they can send them there and, put them under whatever generic blanket problem that the doctors back then wanted to say they had, and then they got lobotomized.
Jeez.
Yeah, and not just the women, the kids, anybody. There was some cool history about that place because it was so old. I believe it held the largest amount of I want to say it's limestone. It's certain type of stone that's known to be really conductive for paranormal activity.
Yeah.
Besides sorry, I'm having a blank. The Russian, the big Russian Assembly Federal Building.
I'm not sure.
I can't think of the name of it now. It's the Kremlin.
Oh, the Kremlin.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So the Kremlin is number 1 in the world for having this large amount of this stone. Trans-Allegheny is number 2.
So I'm pretty sure limestone is, I think in Kentucky, which isn't far from here. I'm seeing this is in West Virginia, right?
Yeah, Weston.
So in Kentucky, I think that there's the largest amount of deposit of limestone in the country. I thought I thought
that sounds right. I know there's a lot of limestone mining there, even down here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, driving by out towards the Oak Ridge area, I think, off was it? It's not 40, I forget, but you see the mines right off the road there, and it's just like, wow, and they're huge.
Yeah, they're massive, absolutely massive. There's some where again, I think I know the one you're talking about. That's right off the road, kind of like the back way to get where a lot of the Y12 and ORNL workers go to get to work.
Yes.
It seems like it's expanded a lot. And it's like, I wonder what they're doing down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working on trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So, they're doing something.
Yeah. I've got friends that have worked there. Their families have worked there, generational workers that their whole lives, that's ORNL, Y12, I think K21, K whatever the other one is. But you hear stories. He tells me one specific friend that I have that used to be out in the woods a lot. He would do a lot of landscaping and exterior maintenance for Y12. He'd always tell me about areas that they specifically cannot go, and they've got guards 24-hour out in these mounds in the woods. It's like, what are you guarding out there? What kind of experiments could possibly be going on? He tells me he hears stuff.
So who's guarding it?
They have armed guards. The government, they have security working.
They're out there guarding
these buildings. He says some of them are mounds. They have like foliage over them. They have a concrete doorway, like almost like old school bunkers.
Okay.
They have constant guard around them. And it's like, it could be nuclear materials that they're guarding, or it could be a portal to,
We'll go with portal.
Yeah.
We'll go with portal.
I like that one better.
Nuclear technology is so old.
Yeah.
I have that, the name of the lake in Georgia, Lake Lanier.
Yes, Lanier.
Right?
Lanier.
That's the one. So it says it's estimated that over 20 cemeteries were disturbed. They either flooded it with water, or the ones that they did know about, they exhumed the bodies and reburied them. So part of the local lore says that the spirits that were disturbed by the creation of this lake, they're wreaking havoc on all these people swimming. That's the urban legend.
Yeah.
But he talked about the lady in blue. In 1958, there was a woman named Delia Mae Parker Young that drowned in the lake. And when her body was recovered, she was missing her hands. It's not unnatural. Hands and the feet are the first thing to go. It's just thin ligaments holding those together. So fish, predation cycle, a lot of drowning victims are found missing those. But interesting thing, a lot of people who are not familiar with that story will report, they'll call the police, talking about seeing a woman walking around with blue hands, or a blue dress, missing her hands.
Gosh, I feel like I heard this, I forget, Christian, who's the guy that wrote that book that I have in my bag about the Skinwalker Ranch in was it Alabama, I think it was? Do you remember?
I don't know.
I forget that. I was listening to this guy and I bought the book and I still haven't read it, but there's like this Skinwalker Ranch of the South type area,
right?
And I feel like he was talking about this whole thing.
Yeah, so it's
Trey Hudson.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's fairly, I guess, common knowledge in the area now, or I guess pop culture. I think there's a band that wrote a song, a couple of bands that wrote songs about them. There's poetry. Lake Lanier was actually, I can't remember the author's name, but it was named a poet from Georgia. I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Lanier. It's named after him. But about the cemeteries getting moved, the Army Corps of Engineers were behind Lake Lanier. And if you do any kind of research on American, besides the TVA, Army Corps of Engineers were behind a lot of stuff like that, a lot of missing people and a lot of burial mounds and cemeteries getting disturbed for that kind of stuff. There's, of course, I'm not gonna go too far down the rabbit hole, but if it's the government's involved, there's normally nothing good that's gonna happen.
I agree. Yeah. So you doing these I don't. It's a show, right? Like or it's like a docuseries.
It's a show. This one specifically.
It's like a reality TV show.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I've worked on a couple different things.
Sure.
Some recent stuff that's come out. Some stuff I can't really talk about because of NDAs that hasn't come out yet. All of it being primarily focused around the paranormal and cryptids and all kinds of cool stuff that I can kind of nerd out on.
So and that's your wheelhouse.
Yeah. That's
okay.
Yeah. That's what I love to do. So I grew up Maryville native. grew up in this area, East Tennessee area. My family's from Point Pleasant. Spent a lot of time up there when I was probably 7 or 8. I would go to the Hayes Hotel and do, quote unquote, paranormal investigations with a little, one of those wind up cameras and my cousin, and go take pictures of orbs. So it was from a young age, I was kind of sucked into it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I grew up with a very superstitious little stubborn Hungarian grandmother who taught me how to count crows and taught me the importance of premonitions and her dreams. I would get phone calls at 12 o'clock in the night from her, be like, "Are you okay? Where are you at? Like, what's going on?"
Really?
Like, I'm sleeping. She's like, "Oh, I just had a really bad dream," and then something will happen to somebody else in the family. So
wow,
yeah. So it was. I kind of got hooked at a young age for the strange.
So this is something that like really wasn't foreign to you and your family as far as these things goes, because I mean, like, your lineage is from Point Pleasant, which is bonkers. It's fun. What's interesting is that we're recording this on a Thursday, and literally today, my member show, the woman I talked to, her lineage is from Point Pleasant. We briefly talked about it as well. Like,
it's wild, man. I tell you what, since I sent that email in, I've had so many synchronicities relating to either what I talked about in the email or something that happened to me on that day or around that time that's related to, whether it be owls, which was talked a lot. I listened to the Dark Holler episode. I don't remember what episode number that was, but that was right before I was supposed to come in, and we had to reschedule for some things. But I was getting goosebumps listening to it. The chief of Point Pleasant, the curse that's supposedly related to there and part of the Mothman prophecy. We were told growing up not to say his name. Every time somebody in my family said his name, something bad would happen. I recall one specific time where my uncle, who's now dead because he thought it was hilarious to say his name, I guess. He, not directly, he had gout. Okay. But yeah, he was the one that would always stir things up. And we were sitting outside on my grandfather's front porch, and he had started talking about the curse and I think the courthouse. And no later, probably 2 seconds after he said his name, there was a loud thunder clap, and it just opened. The skies opened up and started pouring. I was like, okay, I believe this stuff now.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that, a lot of getting taught what to step around. I remember being, around that age, I would spend summers up there with my grandparents, and my grandmother would have the newspaper clippings from back then from all the sightings. She has seen him a couple times. My grandfather, so their house is at the very end of one of the bigger neighborhoods in Point Pleasant, pretty much a dead-end road. In front of their house is a railroad track, and behind the railroad track is where the government stockpile for coal, minerals, all that stuff was. And there was one specific coal mound I remember looking out of their window and seeing, and it was always kind of creepy, but my grandfather swore so many times that he would see red eyes sitting on top of it. So that was always on the back of my mind, in the back of my mind, and in the front of my mind when I was up there to, be careful about what you say and kind of where you go out at night.
So the culture up there, I've never spent any time at Point Pleasant. I haven't even been to the Mothman Festival. But back then, what was the ratio of people who were aware of this and actually believed it versus?
I think there was a lot of hype behind it. I think a lot of people kind of got onto the newspaper bandwagon, and then there were people that started coming out, and serious people, people that you wouldn't just, mayors, and my grandfather's best friend was Shorty. He was the sheriff at the time. I remember Shorty's name. Him and Polly, they were the faces of Point Pleasant. They reported seeing him multiple times. Anybody who would go down towards the Nitro area, which, if people that know about Point Pleasant and the Mothman, that's his home stomping grounds, I guess. It's where most of the sightings originally happened in the 60s. So these are people that were not seeking attention. They were people that were not going to say something if it was going to ruin their reputation. So I think the media kind of stirred it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I also think that there were actual sightings and people were serious about it, There was, I recall, I don't remember what year it was, but I remember my grandfather telling me, about a man who pretty much walked out in the middle of winter and froze to death because the Mothman told him to walk out. I don't remember if that's part of the movie. I haven't watched the Mothman Prophecies movie in a while, but that was one of the first like really serious tales surrounding the Mothman that I remember. My grandfather was supposed to be on this. He would have been on the Silver Bridge the day that it collapsed. He had decided that he was going to turn back and go home because he was sick. And my grandfather was, I mean, just like everybody else back then, he was very stubborn and didn't want to look like a weak man ever. So he never took any sick days except for this one. And about 5 minutes after he turned around and got home, that's when they heard that the bridge collapsed. My grandfather has actually got a pretty cool story. He grew up in the area. He pretty much built all of the roads up there, all the mountain roads, all the major roads. He worked for the county, building pretty much all the infrastructure, or the roads to get the infrastructure into Point Pleasant and the surrounding areas. So he met a lot of people. They all had stories. He got to know quite a bit of all of the high strangeness that happened in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So it got passed down to me eventually. But my father, he moved down here, I want to say he was probably in his mid-20s when him and my mom married and then moved down here. And since then, there was always something that happened around us that was paranormal from every house that we moved to. My dad believes, our whole family thinks that it was probably related to just the curse and being from Point Pleasant. Or we were just extremely unlucky and ended up in a lot of haunted houses. The house I lived in when I was born was right next to, it was in Alcoa, it was right next to the airport. So I got to,
oh really?
Yeah. One of my fondest memories was seeing, the Blue Angels when I was younger for all the air shows flying right over the house.
Yeah.
We always had some weird stuff go on there. Our house was kind of, it was 2-story, kind of split foyer type setup. And the bedrooms were on the far end of the house on the right if you're looking at it. And there was a patio on the left side. And there was a bathroom. Mine was facing the front of the house. My parents was their bedroom was on the opposite side. And in front of their bedroom was a bathroom. And I don't remember my age. I don't remember when it started happening. I just remember specifically every night at midnight, the toilet would flush. Just by itself, flush. And my parents thought it was hilarious that, we got a prankster ghost.
Yeah.
And, just continued. My dad stayed up one night, watched the toilet plunger or the handle
really
itself. Yeah. And it just never went away. It happened every night.
Wow. Did you ever stay up to watch that?
Back then, I was so scared. I mean, I'm still I get goosebumps thinking about some of the dumb stuff that I did back then.
Yeah.
This is very early into opening the door to the paranormal. Yeah. So I was being a little baby about it, but what do you do? There was a moment where my dad woke up in the middle of the night. He heard some voices downstairs. So he went downstairs to go investigate. My mom was, just kind of surveying the upstairs. I don't recall waking up. I don't think they woke us up at all. My sister was an infant at this point. My mom said she looked down the hallway into that outdoor patio, and the screen door was closed, but the storm door the door itself was open. She saw a glowing white dog. I don't know where it came from or why it was there, because we have a 4-foot gate that was closed, and we didn't have a dog at that point. She said she saw the dog, and she walked up to the door. My dad was downstairs looking around to see who was in the house. And when she turned around to yell at my dad said that the voices stopped, and she turned around and the dog was gone. So there's always, she thinks it was a guardian angel or some kind of spirit that was trying to protect us from whatever is downstairs. There's a lot of theories that my family's kind of thrown about that kind of stuff. There was a lot of that repeating, the voices downstairs in that house. Then we moved to La Follette.
Well, the voices in the basement, you guys never...
And it never got resolved. It never stopped. But it wasn't every night like the toilet was.
Okay.
It was sporadic. It might have been once a month, twice a month.
Gotcha. I was thinking it was every night. I was
No,
like,
no,
God,
yeah.
like that would like I'd be driven mad.
Yeah. My dad, especially my father, I don't think he could have handled it.
I don't think many people could have.
Yeah, I do believe that there was something that either followed him or was in these houses, that because my dad's a great guy, but there were points where he had something dark in him. I think it was whatever that was.
Really?
Taking control of him. And I mean, he says it to this day.
What do you think that is? Like, why do you think your dad had something dark in him?
I think that it has something to do with Point Pleasant.
Really? So you think it's involving the curse and stuff, not dad, I don't know, like summon demon in the middle of the woods?
No, I mean, he doesn't really say anything about his youth, so maybe he did something really stupid when he was young in Point Pleasant. I don't know, but I guess there is no telling. So we moved to the new house in La Follette, and there was even more weird stuff that happened there. We had handprints in the corners of walls where the wall met the ceiling that were flat between the two, and we'd paint them, and they'd always come back. Voices again in the downstairs bedroom. My sister, this is after I moved out and came back down to Knoxville to go to school with my grandparents. My sister said that she was up there one day by herself, and she walked into my parents' room, which is connected to the kitchen, to get the vacuum cleaner. And as she walked back out, all the cabinets were opened. And this happened multiple times with, whatever was deciding to play tricks on her there. And then I had probably the scariest event that I could relate to happen to me when we were in that house. This was after, so my grandfather from Point Pleasant came down and visited with us. And the next morning, after the first night they got there, he woke up and he asked us who that was outside on the patio with the bright lights. Dad was like, I don't know what you're talking about. They were down there for, I think, a week, and it happened 3 times. Nobody knew. I mean, nobody was out there that we knew of. We didn't hear any knocks. But after that, my mom started seeing whatever she saw in the sky. She says a UFO, something flying, and she would be out. The house was on, I think, 11 acres, so it took a while to mow. And she was mowing the front area next to the road, and she looked up and saw it kind of hovering. And it was not fairly close to her, but it was, probably a couple 100 feet in the air.
That's like an hour north of here, roughly?
Yeah, it's about 40 minutes.
Okay.
It's close to the Middlesboro, to the state line from Tennessee and Kentucky.
Gotcha.
After she saw that, after my grandfather said that he saw somebody out on the porch, I remember riding my bike. So this house is desolate. I mean, it was out in the middle of nowhere on a place called Indian Creek. We were the only people on that road, so much that they named it after our family. So I would go up. It was probably maybe half a mile from our driveway, at the end of our driveway, to the front of the neighborhood. So I would ride my bike up and down all day during the summers when I was a kid. And right as the driveway meets the road, across the way, it's all woods, but there's a really thick area. Looks like, like a deer bed or something. And I remember coming back around dusk to come home for dinner, and I just see 2 red glowing eyes in that little thick area. And I thought it was probably a fox, or maybe just the light hitting a deer or something like that. So I didn't think much of it. It kind of creeped me out. I always got a really weird feeling about that area, mainly just because it's woods, and woods always freaked me out. I remember like Blair Witch Project coming out around that time. So I was like, I don't want anything to do with it. That
was based in Maryland, I think.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't far from where I was growing up.
It's like, I'm never going in the woods.
Yeah.
To this day, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to the Adirondacks or not. I'll take the Appies.
Yeah, I hear you.
Of course, I guess we got our own weirdness here too. So,
Tons.
Yeah.
Tons. I love it here.
Yeah. So we, days go by, and I saw it a couple more times. It was always in the same spot. And that's what made me even more weirded out about it. Or made me start to get weirded out about it. And one day I came down the driveway. The driveway was at like a 40% grade. It was really steep, and I came down it flying. And normally I can just brake late and cut and go up the hill. It helps me push because the rest of the drive or the rest of the road's a hill. And apparently that didn't work. And I flew over and into right next to that thicket, went over the handlebars and kind of laid there for a second. Like, man, this sucks. Like, this isn't fun at all. And I hear something stomping behind me, like running. Normally if you hear a deer, it's light. They're very light and nimble. And this was heavy footprints or heavy footsteps stomping really fast. And I got immediately set up, and I turned around and didn't see anything, but I felt like something was right there, like on my neck. So I got up and got out of there as quickly as I could and made sure I never went down in that area again. And it wasn't until later that I tried in my head to make the connection between the Mothman and whatever that was, just because of the red eyes. That was the only thing that connected in my head, which kind of furthered my conspiracy theory that, whatever curse that was involved with the town followed us down there.
There's a lot of people that say Bigfoot has red eyes.
Yeah, I thought about that too, because so the end of our property line, we were completely surrounded by woods. The end of the property line was completely wooded, and then on the other side of that, probably about 200 feet, was water. I was like, oh, this would be a perfect area for Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
So,
this whole area. I mean,
yeah.
Like I know I've said it on the show before, but I literally am stunned at the culture in this area when it comes to Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just everywhere.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's a lot of people like to believe because it's better to believe that there is something out there.
Sure.
There's so many people that have seen it or have stated to see it. It's like, how can it not be, Let
me ask you, I don't want to veer off your stories here, but this is something that I really wanted to ask somebody. You grew up around here. You're around the same age as me. I'm 37. You're 34. And growing up around here, you grew up before Finding Bigfoot was on TV.
Yeah.
What was the conversation like around here when it comes to Bigfoot before it became part of pop culture?
I mean, he was here.
Really?
Yeah, there were stories all over the place about it. It wasn't because I see it more on TV now than I did back then. Doesn't change the fact that it was always a hot topic in the area.
Yeah,
it was always something that people talked about. It was. I'm trying to think if I've had anybody in my family that said that they've had sightings. Lakes. It always seems to be lakes that everybody that I talk to or I've heard stories from in the area. It's always next to the lakes. I think one person. I don't remember who it was, but I remember hearing a story of somebody saying they saw him down on the river, down like downtown Knoxville.
Really?
Area. Yeah. So
wow.
I mean,
there's so much water around here. Mm-hmm. It would make sense that is a spot that people would see it. Just the water source.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because there's so much water here, I'm finding out that a lot of people travel to this area for the water sports, the fishing, all that stuff. So it does kind of make sense. I don't know. I always wanted to see Bigfoot. I've heard Bigfoot. I've never seen Bigfoot, and maybe my chances have increased since I moved here.
I guarantee if you look for him, you'll get some evidence around here because it's so often that you hear of somebody saying they see something or hear something, hearing a call or somebody knocking. Back to the water thing without going too far into Bigfoot. And then, there seems to be like two sides of people with Bigfoot. Those who think he's a natural evolutionary step in humans or in a species. And then there are people who think he's paranormal, that he's a dimensional walker. And
there's people like me who are like Bigfoot fluent, and we just go with both.
Yeah, well, that's why can't it be both?
Right.
But if that's the case, then water is known to be a conductor for activity, right? So it would make sense. Besides, everybody's going to drink, so it just makes sense that with the amount of wildlife, the amount of area, and even in the Smokies are busy. The people come from all over the world to visit, but they visit Cades Cove. There's so much. That park is huge.
I've heard of it. I've never been there yet.
Yeah, it's
It's that big, huh?
Yeah, it's massive. There were some awesome trails. It's beautiful. If you really want to experience the mountains, you want to experience what.
I'll have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
So let's get back on topic here. I didn't want to. I'm like totally like ADHD to the max. So
I am too. It makes me really hard. We're talking about.
I go all over the place. I'm like, wait, what were we talking about? So literally, what were we talking about?
Stories, paranormal stories. So it kind of ends there for my young life. In the Jacksboro house. I mentioned my dad having whatever darkness that was. It got to a breaking point there where we were kind of scared to be around them. So I wanted to go to school in Knoxville, which I don't know why, because it was so busy. But I thought I'd get a better education down there. I had more friends in Knoxville, so I moved down here with my grandparents, and all the activities seemed to stop, or at least slow down, to the point where I don't note of anything major happening. We in between then we traveled quite a bit. My dad had this was right at the beginning of us moving to La Follette. He owned a shop down in Knoxville, a mechanic shop, and one day he just decided he didn't want it anymore and sold the house, and we traveled everywhere west of the Mississippi for about 2 years. So I got to see everything. It would have been a lot cooler if I wasn't 12 years old. And
so it was like a nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it was.
It seems cool.
It was fun for me getting to see Mount Rushmore. And, I mean, I saw everything from that to like a pimp arguing with a prostitute in Reno, so, but we saw some crazy stuff then, lights in the sky and lights close to the campgrounds, that kind of stuff. But it was something I would have appreciated a lot more if I wasn't with my family, my mom and dad and my little sister when I was 12 was like the last place I wanted to be. But there's still a lot of it that I really liked, and seeing, lights over water in Utah, hearing stories of Bigfoot, and like having the chance to go into the Cascades and try and look for them. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to pack as much high strangeness and weird as I can into my life whenever I can.
Yeah. Wow. So you are now in life. You're doing what you're doing, but the TV show the reality show, is that the show that you caught that EVP on?
Yeah. So the most recent one, which hasn't come out yet, we were doing an interview in the Lizzie Borden Hotel with one of the curators there, or the tour guides, I should say. We went through the whole place. They stopped all the tours for the next couple hours for us, so nobody was around except us. We started at the bottom where they found the bodies. They did because back then they didn't really have cold rooms for bodies, so they did autopsies on top of kitchen counters. That was kind of the normal. So we did an interview around that, walked around, went upstairs to the little girl's room where they used to laugh and play. And she had, the tour guide had actually just mentioned about how the kids could be seen laughing in this area. And all of a sudden I hear like little girls laughing as I'm running the boom, and I start getting goosebumps, and I look at my field producer like what's going on? And he's like, what? Just pointing my ears. And so I didn't want to stop, make them stop roll. So I just kept recording, listening to this, and kind of faded in and out. And after we stopped that take, it grabbed him. I was like, you got to listen to this. I don't know what it was, but keep it so we can throw it in the show and listen to it, make sure I'm not crazy. So we looked around the window right next to it to make sure there was no kids outside or anything. So he sent it to a couple of the showrunners back here in Knoxville, and they're all like, yeah, it's little girls laughing. So that was the first. Of course, that was early on in the scary tour. And then we went, I will say, we're talking about Trans-Allegheny being kind of kitschy, but we were there all day. And by the time we get to the nighttime, they take us to the part where they don't take normal tours, and they normally have it off limits, is the prison. And apparently they had some pretty gnarly dudes in here. And then we started getting rocks thrown at us and hearing whispers. And that was it. So the two tour guides that we had were talking about how they've had multiple instances of doppelgangers and feelings of tightness around the throat and that kind of stuff. So when we started getting the rocks thrown at us, the tour guide was like, yeah, you guys, if, you might want to head out because it's probably going to get uncomfortable. And that's when I was like, okay, let's just walk out. So I got everybody else out from upstairs, and I stayed up there for about as long as I was comfortable and recorded some audio. So
that said, are you like the only one on the crew that is a paranormal dude?
Yeah, so a couple of the guys, so there's 5 of, four of us in a PA, and the PA just varied between where we are. The PAs were more believing, I think, than the rest of the crew. They were kind of skeptical, but I think a few of them were kind of skeptical. They just wanted to stay skeptical in case anything did happen. They could just write it off and not have to say that they dealt with something they can't explain.
Yeah.
So I was always very, very adamant about let me record room tone and nats, and you guys go downstairs or go somewhere else so I can record this by myself. And you'll have room tone, which anybody who edits, like that's you need that all over a show. So I'm doing my job, and I'm also doing something fun. And if I catch EVPs, and they've got something that's going to create good content in the show. So,
yeah.
I was always the one pushing for that kind of stuff. But I think by the end of it, I think a couple of them had their eyes opened a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially after the Lizzie Borden, which is kind of cheesy to say because it's Lizzie Borden, and whether or not the place is actually haunted can be debated, but we heard something and I can't explain it that easily. So I'm going to stick to saying it was an EVP.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was an event. It was a fun event for sure. But yeah, I was the only one who really wanted to push for that kind of stuff at the beginning. So I don't know if we ever do another one, which I hope we do. Maybe I'll get them a little more amped up for it.
Are you like a paranormal investigator at all when it comes to this stuff outside of doing it for work?
So I try to be with having a 2-year-old and working as much as I can. I don't really have the time like I used to. When I do, I go and I record EVP, or I try to record EVP. I'll run cameras, do anything that I can, either by myself with the gear that I have, or I'll try and get together with people that I know, either from the past or reach out. There's forums where people are crazy enough to meet random strangers and go sit in dark rooms with them.
I'm not one of those.
Yeah. Well, my problem is I don't like to do Ouija boards and antagonize, and it's been really hard for me because I want to do it the right way. And
what's the right way to you?
Right way to me is not. And let me say this first off: I'm not a perfect Christian. I'm not a perfect man in any way. I've struggled with Christianity, with my religion, since I was a kid. But I do not want to stray away from what the Bible tells me not to do, as far as like opening portals and doing things.
But if they open, jump through them.
Yeah. Well, I've got another one I've got to catch after the interview. So.
Perfect. Can I come?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's the aspects of just what my gut tells me not to step on and not to tread on, because there's some things you can't take back, but there's also that spot where it's like, okay, I want to be as much of a I don't want to say proper Christian, but I want to do things the right way, Yeah. So
I'll tell you, with our new docuseries we're coming out with in 2023, Shadow Appalachia, we are kind of tackling paranormal investigation like that, in the sense that we're all Christians. One's a pastor, and we don't do Ouija boards. There are certain, like, we're basically doing paranormal investigative things, and we're developing. I shouldn't say it is a we thing, but it's mainly Richie from Sword and Staff Podcast. Mm-hmm. He is. We're going to be developing investigative techniques around our convictions, and it should. We believe it's going to yield more results than what you see on TV. And because we're not, like you and I and Christian were talking about earlier, about being handcuffed by the industry and stuff, because we're not handcuffed, we're going to be able to show people what we actually uncover. And I really believe that we're going to, like, it literally might lead to more wild nights doing it this way than any other way could have been.
It's kind of like more flies with honey.
Yeah.
It makes you think. You have to get creative if you want to do things not the enticing way. If you don't want to antagonize spirits, or if you don't want to be intrusive, because people do it because they get reactions. You hear people poke ghosts or call them out and
come fight me.
Yeah. It's like, okay, man, all right, we get it. But I don't. There's no easy way. There's no like set rule book for doing this, like the Christian way. There's no set way of saying,
yeah,
you can do this. This is a good way to, if you want to speak to a ghost at this time, there's just not a lot of investigation that gets done that way. So I think that's a really, really awesome avenue to take, and it's going to stretch your minds a lot.
Tell me. And we're going to be doing it at an ancient site.
Yeah.
Just think Serpent Mound, undiscovered, but discovered now.
Yeah.
That's where we're going. So
you're going to have plenty of activity.
Oh, like this is like from what I'm understanding, like the epicenter of why Point Pleasant, West Virginia, this area has so much craziness. Like we're talking old ancient gods, and we're gonna go fight them. I'm gonna bring my stick,
my ancient god stick, fighting stick.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring my staff. I'm gonna fight you like Moses fought the sorcerers, Pharaoh's sorcerers. Yeah, I'm gonna be turning my staff into a snake, and it's gonna be awesome. Yeah. And people are going to say it's witchcraft. I'm like, no, it's Jesus.
No, it's Jesus craft, man.
It's Jesus craft. Jesus craft. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Do you have any paranormal things happening now around you, like at home or anything like this curse that supposedly follows your family?
So, I will say, since I've reached out to you, since I listened to the podcast, the Dark Holler podcast, and the chief's name was mentioned.
Which I don't know if you said it earlier, but you're not going to mention it because
I'm not
you personally
say it.
are like,
I don't.
I got like 2 hips replaced because of this. I'm not doing it again.
So the last time I mentioned it was when I was working at this last production company. Somebody was wearing a Mothman shirt. I was like, oh, hey, my family's from Point Pleasant. We started talking about it, and they were like, asking about curses and all that, and I just let it slip. And I was feeling kind of ballsy that day too. And, it's like I have it trained in my brain to not even think about the name. But when I said it, about a week later, I was playing soccer, and all of a sudden I couldn't run. So I go to the doctor. I just turned 30, and they're like, yeah, you've got avascular necrosis in your hip. We're going to have to replace it. I'm like, what? So whether it's real or not, or that's just coincidence, I don't care. I'm not taking a risk.
Yeah.
So, So after I reached out to you, I had a couple instances of being woken up with my legs being lifted in the bed while I was sleeping. Total sleep paralysis. I knew it was getting moved, but I couldn't do anything. I woke my wife up, and she was like, "What's wrong with you? What are you dreaming about?" I couldn't move. She was like, "You're making some weird noises." So I used to have sleep paralysis a lot. I've seen shadow entities. I want to say like people, hat man, nothing like that. Just figures, and had really like vivid sleep paralysis of knowing, not necessarily out of body, but knowing I'm asleep, knowing I can't wake up, and having this like dread. But nothing really until that happened. Some stuff with owls, which I don't like to touch at all, especially because of their relation to occult and the devil and all kinds of really bad, scary stuff. My wife and I were watching, was it The Babysitter, my best friend's possession, or my best friend's exorcism, or something like that.
I don't know. The audience probably knows.
Yeah. It was one of those shows. And there's some owls in it. My wife's like, what's the deal with owls? Are they good or bad? It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're bad most of the time. All the way back to Native American beliefs of them being associated with death gods, or, not always good things. To I used to nerd out when I was younger and study ancient mythology, Celtic mythology, and Norse mythology, and a lot of those, birds, specifically crows and owls, are not always, they're frowned upon. They're always associated with gods of war or gods of death, or something like that. So this was, I guess, the day after Lindsay had reached back out to me. We watched that, and that happened. Then, of course, I opened the door, and there's an owl flying in front of the driveway. A couple other instances of just reference to them, some small synchronicities. So nothing too bad. My wife said that she heard some knocking one night at the house. This is all after being more active, after not an investigator and not really doing anything other than listen to podcasts and talking about, coming to talk to you. So I don't know if I'm just peering back and it's, peering and it's peering back, or, if it's just something that I'm now noticing because my eyes are getting a little bit more open than they have been. I'm sure there's a lot more when I was younger that I blocked out, especially at the first house we lived in Maryville. But you know how that kind of stuff goes when you're younger, you kind of block it out.
Absolutely.
So
I like how you say Maryville.
Yeah.
So it's funny because you were born here, and you moved away. Did that moving away make you lose your Southern accent? Did you never have one?
It's funny. I moved away and we came back, and I came back, moved down to my grandparents' house and started going to school at Bearden. Everybody, it was like a fresh slate for me because I didn't know anybody in Knoxville. I walk in and people are like, "Are you from LA? Are you from California?" It's like, "No, I was born here." So I guess I was gone long enough, or had kind of not necessarily been embarrassed, but some kind of like tried to cancel out my accent so people wouldn't, look at me as a dumb redneck.
Did you have an accent before?
Oh yeah. I mean, growing up, it was all around me all the time, so I couldn't not have one.
I wonder if my kids are gonna have one or not. I mean, I don't have one, but they're gonna go to school with kids that have accents.
They're gonna have one, 100%.
Puerto Rican Southern accents.
Yeah, buddy.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. So your wife now, is she cool with you as far as like, say you were to, I don't know, go hunt monsters in the Smokies and stuff, and then you accidentally bring home a demon? Like, is she good with that stuff? Or
she's cool with me going to hunt them. She's not cool with me bringing it around. I think more for me than for her, because I think I'm a little more sensitive to stuff than she is. But she's definitely a believer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think she's okay with it until she's not okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so right now she doesn't have a reason not to be okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Gotcha.
she's gung ho for me doing the things that I love. So
yeah,
she's great that way. But until I bring something home, and my son is absolutely obsessed with anything ghost related. He loves.
And he's 2?
He's 2. And
really?
He loves to watch ghost hunting shows with me.
Really?
We'll go ghost hunting. We'll go ghost hunting. We'll go open so our neighborhood, we live in a neighborhood, but we're surrounded by farms. So there's cows right in front of us. There's horses on the right.
That's the way
horses
mine is
behind
too.
us. Love it. We'll go outside and he'll say he sees ghosts in the cow field. And he uses his spidey webs. And
that's my kids do too with the spidey webs. That's so funny. Wow. Okay. So I've never watched a ghost show with my kids.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure my son would be terrified.
Yeah.
Like, does your son get scared of ghosts being in the house or anything?
He has a couple nightmares. My wife thinks it might be related to it, but he's had them before. I think he's super mama's boy, and if she doesn't sleep with him, like all the way through the night, he wakes up and she's not there.
That's what my son was.
That's a breakdown, you know. So I think that's probably more of what it is. But she's like, okay, you think you need to tone it down with watching the ghost shows with him a little bit.
I mean, with my kids, like Ben would come in my office and he'd see like Bigfoot stuff, and like I did have a Mothman poster on the wall, and it was good. It was kind of scary for a kid and stuff. And I remember the first time he walked in the office as a little kid, he just kind of stood there and stared at like, what is that? And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just a weird bird, buddy.
It's my buddy.
It's just a weird bird. But the topic of Bigfoot, he really gravitated towards.
I mean, it's fascinating
about
when you're a kid, man.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating.
And then I remember recently, since we moved here, he would say things like, Daddy, Bigfoot's not real. And I was like, how dare you? Like, who have you been talking to?
Not my son.
Get out. And I think I've manipulated his brain enough now to start saying it's real again.
Yeah.
So I'm brainwashing my son to believe in Bigfoot.
Condition him the right way.
Yes. And I don't care if it makes him an outcast. He'll be always popular in my book.
That's right, and that's all that matters.
But yeah, he's talking to me about Yetis and Bigfoot and all this stuff. And we were driving to school today, and he was talking about the size of Bigfoot, and he's like, I just don't know how we can not see it if it's so big. I'm like, son, that's a very complex conversation that takes longer than 20 minutes.
How much time do you have? Well, there you go. We've got that show that I just worked on, Bigfoot versus Yeti, on TV, so you can watch that with him.
Is that something that he could watch?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When's it coming out?
It's already out. It came out on National Bigfoot Day.
Gotcha.
Which is October 21st, I think it is.
Okay. What channel?
On Tubi.
On Tubi, that's right. Tubi. Hey, listen, I'm new to this whole TV stuff. And Expedition Dogman's on Tubi, supposedly. I haven't been able to find it yet. How long does it take for these companies to post that stuff? Do you know?
I mean, they give you air dates. They
give you air dates. Don't give me air dates.
Well, I mean, it's contractual obligation.
Gotcha.
So if you work with them and you say, I want it on this
I'm not
date
working with them directly. I'm using Film Hub.
Yeah, I would reach out to the distributor and see, because they have to let you notify you when it's...
Gotcha.
Because that's when the money starts coming in and all the legal stuff comes in is when it starts airing.
Yeah, I'm just going with the flow on all this stuff. I don't forget. They're like, when's it? I don't know. When's your next film? I don't know.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you got to press for it and be like, hey, it's when it's on Tubi. Because apparently, we were talking about it earlier. Tubi's.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
I'm hearing
it's becoming a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I downloaded their app on my phone, and I've been checking the website and stuff, and it's very clean and operational. It does remind me of a Netflix type of vibe, and that's what they're saying, that it's going to replace Netflix in the future here. So, Expedition Dogman is now on Tubi.
Hey,
look at that! I just live on the show. I just checked it out. Look at that, Expedition Dogman. There's Christian's mug right there. Look at that. Okay,
nice. Congrats.
Look at that. All right. So I don't know what that means now, but. There you go. Anybody listening this far, if you haven't unplugged yet, Expedition Dogman, right there on Tubi. Download the Tubi app today.
I have a synchronicity.
What's that?
So, Cody, you mentioned that you knew what the National Bigfoot Day was. Do you know what day the first Mothman news article came out?
October 21st?
No. It was today, 1966.
Oh, are you serious?
Are you serious? What's today's date? I don't even know.
That's wild.
Yeah, so the first sighting was November 12th, but it was this date. It was today, 1966, that this article came out titled "Couples See Man-Sized Bird ... Creature ... Something."
Wow.
And I thought that was pretty funny.
And it's crazy because today I'm dropping an episode where the lady, she comes from Point Pleasant. That's kind of crazy.
Man. It's all related.
So the synchronicities with the show over time and stuff. Like sometimes people are like, "Man, that was a great time." I'm like, I literally did it by accident. Like I don't plan that much, So,
yeah, it's. I mean, the more you look, the more you see.
Yeah,
it's things are. I've been nerding out on the new God of War game, and he tries to change fate in it or whatever, and it's like you can't change fate. Things happen. All the pieces come together for a reason, right? So.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So would you ever go up to like the Point Pleasant area to do investigative stuff?
Oh,
since it's your roots?
Yeah, I go up there as much as I can.
So it doesn't scare you away? No. It's just the chief's name.
Yeah.
Is no go.
I don't know if it's somebody directly in my family saying it or if it's people around me saying it, because all I said was when through correspondence with your wife, she said, "Hey, we're going to have to reschedule." I just listened to the episode. Said, "Hey, you guys be careful, because every time something like this, that name is mentioned around me, something bad happens." But obviously, like, there's a separation there.
Yeah.
So I haven't dared to venture that far into it.
Something bad could have happened, and I just don't connect dots. So
there you go.
I mean, I'm so like deaf.
Well, my wife's grandfather passed away yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
So maybe there's some correlation there that I haven't put together yet. But I'd probably be a little more cautious of it if it happened today or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always something. If you look, the pieces will come together.
Huh. Interesting.
Well,
Interesting. Well, I think this was a fun recording.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
You don't have any. Do you have any? Let me put it this way. Do you have anything you'd like to promote as far as your work goes or anything?
Yeah, if anybody's got any kind of projects, I do a lot of network stuff. As cheesy as it's been, I've been doing a lot of home improvement. Fix It or Fabulous is the one I've been working on most recently for HGTV. So I do a lot of network stuff. But if anybody's got a project that they feel so inclined to get some sound design worked on for paranormal, anything related, and give me a shout. And if I've got time, then I'd love to get my hands in as much as I can. Like I said, this is my first year full on freelance from leaving company I've been at for a long time. So I'm just trying to get my name out there and do what I can. So
do you want to put your whole name out there then?
Yeah. It's Cody Alford, ALFORD, c.alford88@gmail.com. I haven't LLC'd yet. I've been pushing it off so much, but I'm sure that'll happen soon.
Yeah. So I mean, if anybody's looking for sound design out there, I know there's people that listen to the show that are creators,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a free agent.
Yeah, free agent. So you pick me up and send me out to wherever to Point Pleasant.
I got plans for you, my friend.
All right, sounds good.
We're gonna send you all over.